I'm Alex. Warhammer was one of the first strategy games I played as a kid. Most people built around the lore, and in the old world you can build quite heavily around the laws of magic and do some pretty wild and thematic things. Let's have a look. Magic is integrated into every phase of the turn, creating a smoother and more interactive playing experience. If you understand it fully, it could make a big difference on the units you want. If you really like a particular unit, it could change what magic you want to support it. There's not really a one-size-fits-all solution, and not every unit is going to pair well with the same laws. In fact, you often want to bring two different laws that work well together. Each of the 8 laws has a great variety of effects, and each faction usually has 3 choices plus some unique spells of their own. The most powerful spells, though, are conditional, letting you get out of some pretty bleak situations if you're able to set up the right spell on the right unit at the right time. Let's look at our first combo. You don't generally want your wizard to fight a dragon in combat. An illusion wizard with Spectral Doppelganger generates 2d6 auto hits, which for a vanilla wizard won't be very impressive, but there are some interesting options. At the extreme end, an Empire wizard can buy the Mace of Hellstorm, which hits at strength 10, pierces armor, and then multiplies again into d6 wounds. So in theory, this could dish out 72 wounds, compared to a cannon's measly 4, but even the average of 20 wounds, minus ward and regen, has pretty good odds of taking down the toughest models in the game. Now, some voices in the Warhammer community have quite strong feelings about competition. Back then, competition generally meant people spamming the exact same units, which is understandably tedious, especially for players who wanted to feel beautifully painted miniatures and coherent army themes. I promise you don't have to abandon that to do crazy things in the old world. But if you don't make an effort to understand your faction before you commit to your army, you risk being disappointed when you battle against someone who has. In the old world, every kill reduces return attacks. Positioning will determine which unit gets to charge, which usually results in them striking first. Magic and movement are closely linked, with every law having a different conveyance spell, aimed at getting different units into or out of trouble. They're cast after charges are declared, so their role is mostly for helping you set up threats. My personal favourite conveyance spell is Steed of Shadows. It can exclusively be used with infantry, and gives you a 24-inch flying march over terrain and units. And that's a lot by itself. Most people might think that seems like enough. You have to fling your unit right up to the deployment zone on turn 1. But you'd be wrong to think that that's enough. Most units can now adopt a marching column, travelling 3 times their movement. So your block of infantry can fly anywhere on the board on turn 1. It makes perfect sense if you think about it, because by having a narrow frontage they can minimise air resistance, much like birds flying in formation. I would love it if someone managed to represent this on the model. Now, normally our triple speed flock of infantry can't charge afterwards due to an oddly specific line in the rules, where marching columns can declare charges, but can't make a charge move. There's a good reason for that. The unassuming new rule drilled is actually far more useful than it first appears. With this free maneuver happening before movement, these elite troops can adopt the frontage of their choice, so they are then able to carry out a charge move. And with our trusty Shadow Steed, we could set up a devastating turn 2 charge with a majestic flock of Khorne's chosen warriors. Few spells have a 24-inch range. A lot of them are a lot less than that. Modern wizards of the old world need to be mobile to ensure that they can actually cast their spells. As potent as casting them is, stopping them is sometimes better. The most direct counterplay is baked into the magic system. A powerful wizard within 24 inches can wizardly dispel an unlimited amount, and it nearly halves the chance of a spell being cast. The trick is to reach the perfect spot to cast your spells, while keeping enemy wizards from doing the same. That's much harder for some wizards than others, because by default they also need to keep the targets in their front arc. It's hard to target different types of spell when your wizard has to point at every target. Thankfully there are ways to ignore this. By sitting alone or on a horse, wizards are usually skirmishers with full 360 vision. You're probably thinking the same as me, that they're owls, but also that it's dangerous to go alone. So take this, you usually can't be targeted when you're near a friendly unit of the same type. The thing is, if you're going to be stuck near a unit, you aren't really that mobile. What wizards really want is someone to drive them around so they can do their thing. And Chariots are exactly that. They have the firing platform special rule, which lets any mounted wizard cast in every direction, but there's much more to it than that. A wizard can use the Chariot's toughness, armor save, combine their wound values. They can still use the wizard's ward and regen saves, and even though they're slightly more fragile than some monster mounts, this particular unit type can't be struck down with either a killing blow or a monster slaying hit. They're powerful in combat too, mostly because Chariots get impact hits, and wizards can finally use their combat-only assailment spells relatively safely. A Chariot wizard can threaten a pretty devastating charge, making them much harder to hunt down. It's also the perfect vessel for Demonology's Daemonic Vessel. This spell is normally limited by having a range of self, but with 2 beasts and 2 crew, you're getting 5 extra attacks without the downside of putting your wizard into a real unit and not being able to see anything. Thankfully for your opponent, they have a chance to see it coming. If they can't avoid it, there's a chance they can dispel it. Casting is actually pretty simple. You choose a wizard, an appropriate spell, and a target in range. You roll 2 dice, add your wizard level, which should usually be 4, and then each spell has a minimum casting value, vaguely based on how powerful the spell is, but you can usually succeed about 80% of the time. If they can, your opponent will use a wizard within 24 inches of the caster, as long as it's not preoccupied with fighting or running. Your opponent will also roll 2d6 and add their level, which should also be 4, but they need to get a higher roll. In Dispel range, your success rate drops from about 80% to about 50%, but many factions get tools to improve their Dispelling too, sometimes quite significantly. A level 4 wizard is worth at least 3 level 2 wizards in this environment, because every bonus of 1 has an outsized impact on cast and dispel success. Being within 24 is only one consideration though, because usually if you can dispel them, they can also dispel you. So are you more afraid of their spells, or do you really need your own? More importantly, where is their expensive squishy wizard going to have to move to try and cast their spells, or to shut us down, and can we make it too dangerous for them? Magic has some pretty powerful synergies in every phase, but it also has plenty of limitations, and there are quite a few strategies you can use to control enemy wizards and keep them from doing too much damage. If you have any burning questions or cutting insights, I'll do my best to respond in the comments below. Next time we'll be exploring the 6 spell types and the sort of combos that you can do with them.